I've obviously heard so much about the Alien franchise, it's unreal, being regarded as one of the greatest sci-fi horrors of all time, with the films not just tackling that genre but also exploring others and being directed by some greats, Ridley Scott, James Cameron and David Fincher. I'm excited for this. I only really got into film in 2019 when I was 16 and I'm 21 now, which is why there are so many films I actually haven't seen, and it can get quite overwhelming, when you're trying to choose what to watch when you've missed so many. I like horror. It's not one of my favourite genres, but I do like it, and I like sci-fi as well. But I've never properly had the reason to watch any of the Alien films until now with the release of Alien Romulus. I also got quite confused on what style I want this video to be, as it's not a ranking of these films. I just wanted to share what my first thoughts after watching these were, and I'm not really a reaction kind of guy. I don't want to film my reactions to these films because I'll inevitably over or underreact, which is what normally happens, and I'm really not a fan of that. The reactions have to be true in my opinion, so it's not a reaction. In this video I'll be exploring the 6 different films in the Alien anthology, so that's the original Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Prometheus, Resurrection and Covenant, that's not in order, and also sharing my thoughts on Romulus. I was going to do a separate video on Romulus, but I just thought it makes sense to put it in this video as well. I'm not doing the Alien v Predator films just because I think they're canon in the Predator universe but not in the Alien. They're separate universes from the Alien universe. So yeah, it's just going to be those 7 films. I really loved this film. Like I mentioned in my intro, it took me ages to watch the Alien movies, and I really wish I'd seen Alien sooner. The thing I always look for in horrors, tension. I think it's arguably the scariest things in any horror film is tension, and Alien had tension in bucketfuls. You barely see the xenomorph in this, meaning you're often left to the imagination of the titular alien, and often the imagination is the scariest thing for us, which makes the suspense and the tension even worse because you don't know what's coming. As a monster and an antagonist, the xenomorph is really one of the strongest. It evolves stronger and stronger into a different kind of terrifying thought, and you're left with the same thoughts as the members of the crew. What's coming next? I'm a huge fan of when films keep their locations to a minimum, and for Alien it's really perfect. We gain a sense of familiarity with the spacecraft, which is also helped by us learning straight away what their mission is, and learning the characters' motives, and makes the impact of the xenomorph coming on the ship a lot more intense. Ripley is such a well-written lead character and such an amazing protagonist. She has this bravery and leadership which is partnered with intelligence and resourcefulness, which makes her one of the most perfect characters in a film of this genre. Sigourney Weaver delivered such a brilliant performance, and I'm so glad Ridley Scott decided that the character Ripley be female, as this was one of the first portrayals of a female character of this strength and courage and intelligence in the genre on the big screen, and I'm sure many people found this character of Ripley really empowering. Watching this film also made me miss the use of practical effects. Even in 1979, that's what, 45 years ago, it still looks so good, so real. The iconic scene where the baby xenomorph explodes out of Kane's chest was just incredible to witness, and I will never forget it. The cinematography is great, making you feel like you're in the room with the alien as the rest of the crew, so you experience the same emotion as the other characters in the film. I actually cannot wait to watch Alien again. Now on to Aliens, which I've heard incredible things about. That was brilliant. I found Aliens to drift towards more the sci-fi action genre compared to Alien being a sci-fi horror, even though Aliens does have horror elements that the previous had. A massive tonal shift from the first, which is likely to happen when the sequel has a different director and leads towards a different genre, but I was all for it. I would have enjoyed a sequel which was like the first, but I loved this film. James Cameron does action so well. The way Cameron was able to produce such a brilliant sequel on a great original in a different genre just further shows how good Cameron is. Aliens was so exciting. I was entertained scene after scene, and I really didn't want it to end. It felt so tense throughout, and it was exhilarating throughout the entire runtime. I never really got a break. I found the Marines to be quite likable, and Ripley was as great as she was in the last film, standing up to the Marines and Burke, and the film just further enhanced my opinion on Ripley, that she's one of the greatest protagonists and film icons of all time. There's a lot of killing corporate arseholes in this film, and the first one, which I'm always here for. My favourite parts were when Ripley discovered the ovipositor, saw all the eggs, and eventually found the queen. Until the end, they're fighting on the ship. I saw someone say that it's a mother fighting a mother, and that's so true. Ripley is practically like the mother of Newt. She's been a protective maternal figure for Newt throughout, and this makes this final battle so rewarding, as it's a fight with full emotion from both sides. You know what? I think I prefer Aliens, but just. I think this is one where one week I'll prefer Alien, the next I'll prefer Aliens. It's gonna go back and forth. So yeah, that was something. I mean, whilst watching Alien 3, it felt like it was trying too hard to live up to the films that became before it. And I get it, right? The first two are absolutely brilliant, some of the best of their respective genres, by two greats, and such a big name to live up to. It tried, but failed to have the horror of the first and the action of the second, which I think is really tough to pull off. One thing that made the first two so gripping was the suspense and tension, in which Alien 3 just lacked. I was never on the edge of my seat, was never overly fearful of the aliens. I hated every new character introduced in this. The prisoners were just awful characters. They were so uninteresting. They didn't add anything at all. I mean, it doesn't help that the script and story was so weak, so these characters really didn't have much to do, except the painfully long action sequences that lost my attention every time. Thank the Lord we didn't take this too personally on Fincher and trusted the process, because Seven was released just 3 years later. Damn, Alien Resurrection was not good. I can't lie, I don't know where we go from this now, because watching this felt like they're running out of ideas. The only thing different from what we've seen before is that Ripley is a cloned version of the Ripley we know. I know for movies like this you have to take the script with a pinch of salt, but it is weak, going for humour which was executed so poorly with just awful dialogue, and all aspects like the action, the horror, the tension, all just disappointing apart from a few good scenes, notably the underwater chase sequence, which I, really enjoyed. I thought that was action-packed and throws a few curveballs, and I like the emotion shown in the scene where Ripley 8 finds the other fell cloned version of herself, eventually having to kill one. This does differ from Alien 3, where I'm struggling to think of some notable standout good moments for that one. Also, what is this? This is our monster. It looks like if Ivan Ooze has dry lips and needs to rub Vaseline all over himself. Like, this is not scary in the slightest. I think the aliens were on screen way too much for me. Like I said, for 1 and 2, them having such a limited screen time makes them as scary as they are. And in this, they have a lot more screen time than needed. For a lot of this, I was just thinking, I want my Ripley back. Look, I get she dies at the end of 3 and that she's a cloned Ripley, and it's cool. It's a different character. But it's notable that she's different. Her story finished at the end of 3 for me, and I just wanted that Ripley back. Prometheus is a prequel with no answers. I found it quite odd any questions you have on this franchise from the first 4 films that a prequel like Prometheus should answer aren't answered. In fact, you're left with more questions than when you went in. Logically, Prometheus doesn't really make much sense. There's quite a lot that's trying to be explored, that there's too much substance. They don't know what route to take, which makes the film quite boring a lot of time, especially in the middle of the film. This does become quite an issue, as in the third act they try to deliver an action-packed ending, but where the middle parts of the film have been slow and dull, there's not much momentum to thrust you into this final act. It's visually nice. I think the effects were really well done. They look really well, nice and clean. The cinematography is beautiful as well. It looks great. And I thought the performances all round were pretty good as well. I think Fassbender being the standout. I wasn't really a fan of the lead, but when you had Ripley for the last 4, it's such a hard character to take the mantle of that it would be kind of unfair to expect another character as well written, as well acted, and just as badass as Ripley. So yeah, I ultimately wasn't a fan of Prometheus. I think it didn't do enough as a prequel for the Alien franchise, but it also hasn't deterred me from the franchise. I mean, that was Alien 3 and Resurrection's job, and I'm still here on it. I've now come to the conclusion that it's going to be really quite hard to replicate the tension that the first 2 had. We don't see the xenomorph in these films. That's what really upped the ante with the tension in the others, but we'll see what Covenant and Romulus can do. I, for some reason, did not realise Prometheus and Covenant were a prequel series. I didn't mind Alien Covenant. I didn't mind it. This did a lot more for a prequel than Prometheus did. It gave me answers to some of the questions I had going into this prequel series. I didn't expect David to be the mastermind behind the creation of the xenomorphs. To me, Covenant somewhat establishes David as the main villain, the main monster, not the xenomorphs, which I find to be a nice and different take, and 2 Fassbenders is an ultimate win. I didn't find the horror that scary in this one, to be honest. It's surprisingly bloody. I'd say the most bloody out of all of them so far, which I don't mind. I'm quite a fan of that. Just nothing really scared me in this. It was tense at times, but I was just expecting so much from the horror side of this. The film, like Prometheus, is gorgeous. Like, it has some of the best shots I've seen for quite a while. It's visually stunning. You really see it in the first act where we're seeing the planet they've arrived on and the planet in all of its glory. If it wasn't a horror, I think it genuinely could have had a go for best cinematography at the Oscars. Throughout this prequel series, there's a lot of religious themes and references, which I think is quite fitting. There's a bunch of scientists trying to figure out the origin of humankind, and science is ultimately about asking constant questions on why things happen. It's like a science v religion debate that's happening throughout the prequel series. I really enjoyed Alien Romulus. It felt like we went back to the original roots. It definitely for me feels the most like the original. After watching Covenant, which like I said earlier, I didn't mind, I was just left with the thought that I wasn't too bothered about the franchise anymore. You know, we've had 2 amazing ones, 2 quite bad ones, and then the prequel ones, which were a bit, wasn't really a fan of. Romulus for me has brought more care back. The sci-fi horror elements are back and was actually quite a scary film. I've been banging on about tension and suspense throughout the whole video, and this was full of tension. There were countless gripping scenes that had me on the edge of my seat. There were so many of them that they practically blended into one for me, which just shows how tense I was throughout the film. The standout though was when they had to walk through the room full of facehuggers after matching the temp of the room to the temp of the body to avoid being seen, and they have to see if it works, and it's just such a great scene. Kaylee Spaney is so good. I love her. She's great. She's had an unbelievable 2024. You know, you got Priscilla, came out in 2024 in the UK, so Civil War, and now Alien Romulus, with all 3 offering very different types of performances, which she performed so perfectly and was so great in this. The emotion and fear she brought was really intense, made you feel what she was feeling. Isabella Merced was great at this, bringing the intensity as well, and I really love David Johnson. You know, I first saw him in Rylane, and he's great in that. If you haven't seen it, please do. But yeah, he was incredible in this. Although I found the film tense, the story for me wasn't that captivating. I found it quite predictable and it didn't really offer much new to the franchise. But like I said earlier, it's going back to the original roots, and I would much rather this film did that than be what the others were like. So there we have it. I've now finally seen the Alien franchise. I'm sorry about this video being quite late. I've been caught up with loads of things, but I've been desperate to get this video out. And I know this wasn't a ranking, but as a little gift for making it throughout the whole video, this is what I would do. I really hope you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments what you think of the Alien franchise, and should I watch the Predator, and should I watch the crossovers. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.